everybody.
Howdy, and yes, it's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It's way past our bedtime.
But Mike just got off the phone with someone, and they asked us, hey, have you guys ever done a video about the International Bible Students Association?
The I.B.S.A.
The I.B.S.A. And it's like, yes, we have.
Yes, we did. That's right.
Yeah, a long time ago. So what I did is I went into our archives of my external drive from our first channel, and I found the video. And we started watching it, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much information in there. But I'm going to put the link down below to my Dropbox for the facts for shareholders, because that document is priceless.
Yes. And as you listen to it, when you get around about the 27-minute mark, pay close attention to what Kim is reading from the 4 expelled board members.
The facts for shareholders.
The facts for shareholders, because they make a very strong point about the legality of Rutherford at that time, because any bylaw that he would incorporate into the society would be illegal, and he did not have the authority to execute and manage the organization. He didn't even have the authority to do anything with the society, home and abroad. And it made me think of something real quick about that, because we know that Rutherford wrote an article about bashing the Catholic Church and their misuse of Bible scripture to excommunicate people, and then months later Watchtower turns right around and start excommunicating people. If the organization, if Rutherford didn't have any of this authority back then, now we all know that by the time he wrote this article, he got the authority and they became the splinter group. But the point that I'm getting at, Jehovah's Witnesses, you are part of the illegal side of Watchtower, which means they hold no authority over you. But you might want to be asking this question: if they don't have any authority over me, then how come my family members still shun me? How come we still get disfellowshipped, yada yada yada? Because you are under implied law. Okay?
Corporate law.
Corporate law. The bylaws. You are under corporate law. Your baptism has got nothing to do with you being subjugated to the Watchtower and Babel Crap Society. What subjugates you to their laws and their bylaws is the fact that you go out in service, you give your little 5-minute talks,
You turn in time.
you turn in time, you participate in the service meeting, you actually put your hand, well, wait a minute, answering questions at a Watchtower study, you are not under implied law, because even Watchtower states that somebody coming off the street can answer, the public can answer during a Watchtower study. So you're not under implied law by doing that. But there are other meetings, turning in time, going out in service, there's where they have that control over you, and it's through only implied law.
Yeah. Now I just want to mention, because it gets a little confusing, because there's actually 2 I.B.S.A. corporations in the world.
Right.
There's the original, like what we would call the Russellites, the original Bible students here in the United States, and they are still up and running. They have a website. They still hold to Russell's teachings. They still print his books. Right. And I've talked to him, as you will, hear in the Throwback Thursday video that I mentioned, oh, we need to do some research on that. Well, I actually talked to someone from the, Bible students, and they do not like witnesses. They don't even want anything to do with them, and they totally, separate organizations.
Yeah, and they actually feel that they are the anointed of
They
Yahweh,
are the original
Jehovah.
anointed, of Jehovah, and that Rutherford and the witnesses are the splinter group that splintered off and left the Bible students. Now there's also the IBSA in London. Now they were incorporated, as you were here in the video, in the 1930, I believe it is. Now that corporation is still part of Watchtower. So you've got two different corporations, and I know it gets kind of confusing, but we just have to remember that, that the one here in the U.S. is still the original Russell, Bible students, and then the one affiliated in Europe and several other countries, that one is Watchtower, and that is the corporation that Rutherford, incorporated in 1930 in London. So, I know it's a lot to keep straight, but, thank you so much, sweetie, for asking if we had ever done a video about the I.B.S.A.
And you can tell we did it a while ago because my hair's short and hers is colored.
Well, it's actually from our first channel,
Yeah.
2014, so that's why it's a Throwback Thursday, so enjoy.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our home. We're going to try to get this in a coherent manner. We're trying to get it all in order, and that's the hard part, isn't it?
Chronological order.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Your brain just gets... Boom. So anyway, the other day we watched a video that Dallas, Canada did. Very good video. And he was covering the facts for shareholders.
Some information.
Yes.
And actually, there's quite a bit of information regarding the Watchtower Schism when Russell died.
Yeah. And in his first part, he covered the channel, and then he's covering the 7th volume. So we are not going to cover that. But the name of his video is A Book Watchtower Does Not Want You to See, and it's by Dallas, Canada, and it was uploaded August 3rd, 2014.
And there's 2 parts.
Yeah, 2 parts. But we noticed a few things that Dallas didn't cover, so we just want to kind of add to it.
Well, Kim and I, we've actually been trying to put this together for some time, but, we had a lot of other distractions, a lot of other videos to do in the meantime, and we just happened to see Dallas's, and it's like, well, this might be a good time to do this now, a few months later.
Well, actually, I have this information from the Proclaimer's book, and I told Mike we need to do a video on this and get into doing some research, but for some reason it never came about. And it's like, oh my God, this fits in perfectly. So this is from the Proclaimer's book, page 228 and 229. And over on 229, there is a gray box, and it has the Watchtower seal, the original Watchtower seal, and early legal corporations. Now, there's a reason we're going to be talking about this. Zion's Watchtower Tract Society, first formed in 1881, and then legally incorporated in the state of Pennsylvania on December 15th, 1884. In 1896, its name was changed to Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Since 1955, it has been known as Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania. The People's Pulpit Association, I had never heard of that one either. Jehovah's Witnesses, here's a history lesson for you. People's Pulpit Association, formed in 1909 in connection with the Society's moving of its principal offices to Brooklyn, New York. In 1939, the name was changed to Watchtower Bible Tract Society Incorporated. Since 1956, it has been known as Watchtower Bible Tract Society of New York Incorporated. The International Bible Students Association incorporated in London, England on June 30th, 1914.
So, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, there's sarcasm coming. You might wonder why God, the almighty God of the universe, can't accomplish his will through one channel. He's got to have all these legal corporations to get his message across. What do they got there? 5 or 6 different corporations that they're burying all their assets and all of their bull crap under?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well, it makes me wonder. It mentions that the International Bible Students Association was incorporated in London, England. So does that mean that the Bible students today, the International Bible Students Association, actually holds the corporation here in the United States?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder. Have to do some research on that. But the reason we're going to be talking about this is all of us know that in 1917 there was a great schism. And yes, that is where the SHIT originally comes from.
Yeah. See, this is what Jehovah's Witnesses, why they're afraid to do any research, why Watchtower is deathly afraid for their members to do research, because if they did their proper historical research, they would come to realize very quickly that Rutherford, in his little group, they are the splinter group. And they became the sect, Jehovah's Witnesses. You don't have the true religion because you splintered off.
Yes.
From what Russell was teaching.
Yes. Now, as many of you know who have done research, and it's available, online, JW Facts, we've got all of this. I've got a document from the I.B.S.A that is 96 pages long that is about the 1917 schism. Now, as we know, there was 4 directors that were supposed to take over when Russell died in 1916. And we know that Rutherford did basically a hostile takeover, and he became the president. So we're just going to cover a few of these things.
And there are some questions involved. For instance, when Russell died, why didn't the then vice president step up and take his place? Did his lack of taking the lead allow Rutherford the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I think I can make all of this mine. Can I get some people to vote me in? Can I get some people to back me on this? Well, if you go to the January 15th, 1917 Watchtower, pages 21 and 22, this is small print.
Better get your glasses.
You will see, and what they're referring to is back in November of the previous year, Rutherford was voted in as president. And then there was a convention at Pittsburgh. And if I get this right.
Okay, the Convention of Bible Students at Pittsburgh, January 6th and 7th, was when Rutherford was voted in.
Voted in, okay? But there's something about this article, and I know it's just a little side point, and it probably doesn't really amount to a hill of beans, but I just find it interesting that if you had watched the video that Kim and I had done last week, regarding the Watchtower celebrating the wrong days. And I also used in that video, well, actually I'm not sure, but anyhow, this is referring to 1 Corinthians 11. Every time Watchtower sits down to celebrate the memorial of Christ's death, they always use 1 Corinthians 11 as the model. And one of the things that they sell in that model is that those who do not partake are not, those who do not partake, if they are not allowed to partake, if they do partake, they're partaking unworthily. And part of that video that I did had to, what Paul was talking about was the love feast that was beginning to creep into the Christian congregation, which was a pagan celebration. And I'm not going to read all of that from my archaeological Bible because I just want to jump right to the scripture. The only place in the Bible where the terminology love feast is used is in Jude 12. Now keep in mind that the Jehovah's Witness mindset is that they want a squeaky clean image. Everything they say and do has to be squeaky clean. In fact, if you're a current Jehovah's Witness and you decide to step up and start challenging the elders' authority, they'll put you in the same category as Korah. See, you don't want to challenge Jehovah's authority like what Korah did. So they use these scriptures to put you back into subjection. But here's the interesting thing. In this particular Watchtower, January 15, 1917, They talked about the election of Rutherford, and then the subheading, convention at Pittsburgh. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down. There's just a little one sentence thing. It says the evening address by Brother Van Amberg was greatly appreciated and was followed by a love feast participated in about 500. Jude 12. I'm going to read verse 11 first so I can put this in a context. Too bad for them, because they have gone in the path of Cain and have rushed into the erroneous course of Balaam for reward, and have perished in the rebellious talk of Korah. These are the rocks hidden below the water in your love feast, while they feast with you.
Now, what's interesting is Mike and I watch a lot of documentaries, and we have seen several about Greek and Roman love feast. And it's funny because of history and mosaics and murals and everything, they have pieced together that these love feasts of the Greek and Romans actually involve very disorderly,
some of them became
drunken,
orgies.
You know, just this whole big party, like he said, with orgies and everything else. So for the Watchtower to mention they had a love feast,
it really puts it a whole negative connotation on that whole thing. But anyhow, that was
500.
Yeah. But anyhow, that was January 15th, 1917. Now,
okay, so Rutherford's voted in as president.
Rutherford's voted in. This love feast ensued. Now, August 1st, 1917, Watchtower comes out with a pamphlet or something that's entitled Harvest Siftings.
Now, Russell used to write a lot of these harvest siftings. I don't know if they were like a precursor to the KMs or what, but it was published by Watchtower Bible and Tract Society back then.
Yes, and it's interesting because, now keep in mind, the vice president did not step up to become the president when Russell died, so Rutherford sees an opportunity to get a bunch of good old boys surrounding him and erroneously vote him in as president.
Now, we know the 4 directors were also ousted out of Bethel.
Yeah, so what's happening is inside and behind the scenes, there's this group of contenders beginning to challenge Rutherford being voted in as president. So there's a lot of, backroom bickering and everything else. So gossiping. So Rutherford comes out with this harvest siftings, and it's interesting because right here, Rutherford, for the first time that I can see, Rutherford is beginning to use language that is instilling a cult tactic. Okay? And notice what he uses as part of the title. The evil one again attempts to disrupt the society.
Persecution?
Persecution complex. See? So you've got these 2 factions inside of Watchtower arguing. But it's interesting that right off the bat he says, 2 international Bible students scattered throughout the world, dear brethren in Christ, in this hour of sorrow, mingled with joy, we think of the words of St. Peter, so appropriate at this time. Now, Peter wrote this a couple thousand years ago. And Rutherford is saying, oh, these words are appropriate today. 1 Peter 4:12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fire among you that is to try you, as though some strange thing had happened unto you. Time again, our dear pastor warned us of this coming time, and now it is here. In the Watchtower, under the date of 1897, on page 44, he said, fiery trials are therefore to be expected by all the Lord's people, especially in this day of the Lord. So Rutherford is now recording some of the things that Rutherford had talked about, the persecution that was going to come among them, and Rutherford is now taking advantage of this to sell what's happening inside of Watchtower, this schism.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there's a box right here in the middle, and it's the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society. And it says, and whereas we have heard a statement at length by Brothers Rutherford, Hirsch, Hoskins, Wright, Ritchie, Macmillan, Vanberg, and all of these others. Okay, so this was two different.
Right, and part of this was the good old boys club that voted in.
Yeah.
Rutherford.
And whereas it appears from the facts brought before that Brothers Hoskins, Hirsch, Ritchie, and Wright have not been legally members of the Board of Directors of the Watchtower and Bible and Tract Society for more than 6 months. So these are the 4 directors that were kicked out, and they're basically saying they don't have any rights. They're just, what's the word that brother Elwood Johnson used?
Yeah.
Just trying to...
You're going to make me bang my head again?
No, we don't want that.
What's interesting is when you think about what's being stated here, here again, the schism is already happening inside of Watchtower. You got this group over here saying Rutherford's not the legal president, and we need to have this board of directors direct everything, but Rutherford is trying to get away from that board of directors. But what's interesting is that Rutherford, whoever makes a statement that the board of directors are not the legal entity because they had not been on the board for more than 6 months. Hey, neither was Rutherford.
Yes, and we will read that here.
Rutherford wasn't even on the board of directors, correct?
Yeah. And what's interesting is many of you know that Russell in his will stated that these 4 directors were to take over Watchtower. That's why he gave all of his assets and everything, left it to Watchtower, because these 4 directors were to run it until a legal president could have been voted in, which we know Rutherford wasn't even at the top of the list.
Right.
For that. And so in here...
Yes. Jehovah's Witnesses, there's a lot of great history here that you know nothing about.
Yeah, exactly. But they mention here, it appears from the facts brought before us by these 4 directors. Okay, so what we're going to do is we just happen to have the facts for shareholders, which is the facts that these 4 brothers did for all the Bible students. Now, mind you, here in the Harvest Siftings, it says the evil one again attempts to disrupt the society. They were not trying to disrupt the society, okay?
They were trying to get the society to do things legally.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read their statement of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, now this, the facts for shareholders, that came out in November 15th of 1997.
Of 1917.
1997. Listen
He's still tired from his trip. Okay, 1917. So this was after all of this, okay? So later in the year, in November, they come out with their facts. Obviously, they brought it before Rutherford and the directors first, okay? They were totally shot down.
Yeah.
So then they prepared this for the Bible students, okay? And it says, our statement. This paper was prepared with great care as to the accuracy of the statements made herein, as was done also in the preparation of Light After Darkness, which is a book they did. 5 brethren spent much time and labor in the preparation of the latter paper, and we still believe it to be as accurate, both in letter and in spirit, as possible for 5 brethren to make anything. Okay, and then they explain what they were doing. So here we have the facts for shareholders that they prepared.
Now, how many pages was this?
Oh my goodness, this was...
This is pretty lengthy.
I printed it all up because there was something on every page. It was about 20 pages. I've got 14 in front of me, but it was about 20 pages long.
Now, keep in mind, friends, that before this was actually put on paper and printed, there was already talk going on in Watchtower at that time. See, and that's why Rutherford...
Even back in August.
Yeah, see, that's why Rutherford come out with this in August in hopes to maybe stopping all this talk.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop. The schism was getting wider and wider.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a box here in the front, and it says, this paper contains instructions as to rights, privileges, suggestions, and duties pertaining to the election that was going to be coming up again, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society at Pittsburgh, January 5th, 1918. So they wanted to bring this before the shareholders.
Yeah, because remember, the year previous now, Rutherford was erroneously voted in as president. So the next following year, in 1918, they were going to have another election, and then this is when all of this facts for shareholders was presented to the Bible students.
And I apologize, I forgot to read this other part from the Proclaimer's book, because this was talking about the shareholders, and I meant to do that. So maybe this is a good time to do that, since I forgot. On page 228, the Society's charter set out a shareholder arrangement, in which each aggregate contribution of $10 entitled the contributor to a vote in connection with selection of members of the board of directors and officers of the society. Perhaps it seemed that such contributions gave evidence of genuine interest in the work of the organization. However, this arrangement presented problems. Brother North, the Society's president, explained, from the provisions of the Society's charter, it would seem that the being a part of the governing body was dependent upon the contributions to the legal society. But according to the will of God, this could not be so among his true chosen people.
Now, isn't it interesting that in that little paragraph they inserted the word governing body? There was no governing body back in Noah's day. I mean, at least not the way we perceive it today.
Yeah, and it's interesting because back then, and even back at this time in 1917, these $10 per share, and they had to pay this every year.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Russell hold the majority of the shares during his day so that he could never be ousted as president? Interesting.
Yeah. So the facts for shareholders, we're going to share a few things, and like I said, there is so much in here. It says in the very first paragraph, this paper is issued for the purpose of assisting the Friends in expressing their views and wishes properly with sufficient knowledge at the January election at Pittsburgh, so as to place the responsibility upon each individual where it should properly belong. Okay, and then down to the third paragraph. The ousted directors desire merely to fulfill their responsibility to the Lord and the brethren, so that the mouths of the Friends may be stopped as against them hereafter. It is a legal maxim that a man intends the consequences of his acts, and it is presumed that the Friends of the Truth likewise intend the consequences of the action they are about to take. Okay, now I'm going to skip around. Like I said, there's just so much in here. Now, over on page 2, we thought this was interesting. At the top, the Watchtower Society is not a religious society for public worship, such as a church, but is a business corporation, not for profit, and statutes require religious corporations of that nature to have 3 directors in Pennsylvania do not apply. And I should mention that these guys had a lawyer helping them also. Okay. Now, I believe back then, instead of congregations, they called them classes, Bible classes.
I think so.
Yeah. So,
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
Yeah, I think the meetings were called Bible classes. Okay, so down the second to the last paragraph. The classes, if they adopt the suggestion in the November 1st, 1917 Watchtower, will vote to suggest their preferences on November 21st, 1917. This class vote of those professing consecration, I think that's the anointed ones, has nothing to do legally with the society. No one is a member of the society except he has voting shares. The society is a business corporation, not for profit, and is a creation of the law of Pennsylvania and is not legally a religious corporation.
So even the shareholders back then, the ones that got ousted, realized what Watchtower was all about, what Rutherford was doing with what Russell had envisioned.
Yeah. Now what's interesting is here on page 5, they have a box here in the middle, and it is entitled Vice President's Statement Against the Management in August. Okay, so I'm going to skip down to about 2/3 of the way down. Like I said, I've got this information. You guys can check it out yourself. We never had a satisfactory report from the treasurer since I have been a director. We do not know how the trust fund stands, nor how the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society stands. What are our financial relations between the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and the People's Pulpit Association? How is the trust fund invested? What are the securities? What interest do they draw? So even back then, they were in the stock market.
They were questioning a lot, weren't they?
We want the board recognized and to be permitted to go on doing business until the end of the year or until such time as we can resign, when we shall have no further financial or other responsibility. Because he's absolutely right. At this point, they are legal board members and would have to answer for that. What is the condition of the society's funds? Where was the amount of $100,000 borrowed for the drama work? Now they're talking about the photo drama of creation.
Keep in mind, back in those days, $100,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah. So the board members didn't even know where that money had come from. So is that
interesting, isn't
where
it?
the rumor that the society got a loan from Rothschilds?
Who knows?
Who knows? They didn't even know. See? To whom was it returned? What interest was paid on this borrowed money? So these board members were kept totally in the dark about that. See, and what's interesting, this is why they're concerned. In the event of this matter coming before the courts, these features, of course, will be made public. Why not instead give us the information as members of the board to whom it is due? Because that's it. If they're hauled in before court, they have to honestly say, we have no idea, because they're keeping it from us. Okay, so over here on page 7, third paragraph down in the second column, it says, if Brother Rutherford is not reelected to the presidency of the Watchtower Society, he should, of course, resign as president of the People's Pulpit Association, which tells me he was the president of both.
Both, exactly.
Yeah.
Both corporations.
Yeah. Yeah. And then here, there's a section that says, as to the board.
Page 11, right?
Page 11. First column. Do you know that if the places of the 4 ousted directors were vacant, then the place of Brother Rutherford was also vacant? See, that's like Mike mentioned before. If those board members were not legally board members, then Rutherford was not legally a board member either.
That's why it became an absolute hostile takeover, Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
That's why I said before, you are the splinter group.
Yeah. Do you know that this would have made him ineligible as a presidential candidate and his election likewise illegal? Valid question.
But wait. See, today, Jehovah's Witnesses view this as all being part of God's plan. God used an illegal movement to put Rutherford into as your president at that time.
Yeah.
Come on, Jehovah's Witnesses, do your research.
Do you know that this would also make his bylaws illegal and that therefore he could not have executive and managerial authority in the society at home and abroad?
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there.
You're not going to bang your head.
No. Could you repeat that but just a little bit slower? Because now remember, Rutherford is already the president when this is being
and making
prepared.
Changes and bylaws and everything else.
Right.
Okay. Do you know that this would also make his bylaws illegal and that therefore he could not have executive and managerial authority in the society at home and abroad?
So that means that when Rutherford classified these people as the evil slave, that was an illegal tactic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So by extension, all of us that are disfellowshipped out of Watchtower is illegal.
Do you know that this would also make the society without a board? They wouldn't have had a legal board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, these guys really prepared quite a treatise here when they presented him to the International Bible Students Association.
Yeah. Now this is an interesting point, And I believe I've got, a lot of this lawyer mumble jumble in the Beast files also. Do you know that 13 able lawyers, including the assistants of the Attorney Generals of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, have given it as their opinion that Brother Rutherford's course in ousting the 4 directors was not only morally but also legally wrong.
The guy's a thief.
And all are amazed, too, that anyone professing to be a Christian would attempt any such practice upon his Christian brethren.
Oh, my, I tell you, when you do your research, you really begin to see what a joke, what a snare and a racket Rutherford made the Watchtower organization.
See, Jehovah's Witness, this is why even not only morally but legally makes you the splinter group.
Yep. You're the splinter group.
Okay, on page 11, under controllership, over on the second column down, it says, do you know that the policy of the society referred to in the Watchtower, November 1st, 1917, page 329, number 2, of quotation from present bylaws, is that the president shall rule without restraint, and that the shareholders shall not be permitted to say what the president may or may not do, because they would be prevented from voting.
So that gives Rutherford that would give Rutherford God-given authority.
So do you see why nobody could say anything, because they would be, their votes would be taken away.
You don't challenge the authority or your vote's taken away.
Yeah. Okay, now on page 12, first column, about 2/3 of the way down, it says, do you know that the management is reporting that the society is receiving an average of $1,000 a day for the work? And this is back in 1917.
That was a lot of money back then.
Do you know that you don't know what it is being used for, and that no one else knows either, among those who should know, but that the knowledge is confined to brothers Rutherford, Van Amberg, and Macmillan?
Sort of like that secret elders book.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody knows that now, except some of the more ignorant Jehovah's Witnesses.
Do you know that some of the Lord's saints were forced out of the Bethel with only a few hours' notice to look for food and shelter?
But they still practice that today, don't they?
Yeah, so, even the directors we had heard were tossed out, with only a few hours' notice to hurry and pack up and get out. Okay, over in the second column. Do you know that the vice president of the society should have acted in the place of the president at the time of Brother Russell's death until the next election? But instead of that, he was put aside by the counselor.
Remember, who was the counselor? Wasn't that Judge Rutherford? Of course, I'm
wasn't
probably
a judge.
leaving there.
Yeah. Okay, so on page 13, under the subheading Present Management, the first paragraph. Do you know that the People's Pulpit Association has gained the ascendancy over the Watchtower Bible Tract Society within 1 year after Brother Russell's death? Jehovah's Witnesses, did you know that? Do you know that the society, the church, and all concerned would have been much better off if the management had carried out the will and wishes of our dear departed pastor? Of course, we know that's Russell.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know that the work is now managed on the basis of policy, expediency, and favoritism instead of on the basis of justice and love? Oh,
favoritism. There's a word that I dearly endorse.
Yeah. Okay, so over on the second column, there's one here. It says, do you know that Brother Russell's board of directors, Brother Russell's editorial committee, Brother Russell's VDM, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, VDM board, etc., have suffered so much through processes of smiting inflicted by the Rutherford, Macmillan, Van Amberg rule that the large majority of them have either been driven out of Bethel or are not permitted to enter to take up their duties.
Hostile takeover!
Yeah, exactly.
Jehovah's Witnesses, you are the splinter group.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that it was everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah, there's so much more
Oh, yeah.
in those treaties, the facts for the shareholders. I mean, it's It's unbelievable what was going on at that time. And, and no wonder Rutherford had to come out and classify them as the evil slave later in the future. Because you know darn well that when Rutherford was, I use the term loosely, legally voted in, that the backbiting and the bickering didn't stop.
Yeah. So anyway, I have this great schism of 1917 and all these documents and everything. So I am going to put the link to these files down below in the description. And if for some reason you can't open them, just contact me. Yeah, because I try to keep this, because this is a good resource.
Yeah.
It's a real good resource of all these old documents.
And I think you can find these on JW Facts too, correct?
I believe, on JW Facts, he has a lot of this also about this great schism and how Rutherford basically did a hostile takeover. And it just proves that witnesses, you do not know your full history. You believe what is given to you in this.
Spoon-fed.
But when you get
book.
When you get the actual documents, that is when you see, that there was a whole lot more going on than just some disgruntled board members, and they were the ones that were legally and morally the ones that were supposed to take over and run the organization until a president could be reelected.
But really, even if it was all done above board, you'd still be a false religion even to this day.
In fact, I think if I remember right, that on the list of board of directors that Russell had, that Rutherford was like number 10. So he wasn't even in the top 5 of wishes that Russell wanted to, take over as president after his death. So really interesting.
Do your research, Jehovah's Witnesses.
When you get into the history.
Wake up, realize what you're utterly involved with. And if this video is making any sense to you and you wish to investigate it further, feel free to contact us. So.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, I think that's it for this one. And you want to say goodbye?
I was just going to say goodbye, Kimmy.
So you all have a great
Thanks
weekend,
for watching.
and thanks for visiting us.